The Godfather and its sequels are revered as some of the most influential and the greatest films in the history of cinema. Scoring 3 Academy Awards, Francis Ford Coppola was able to craft a truly impactful work of art for the film industry and for modern society. The unique perspective on American culture that The Godfather had was able to captivate millions of moviegoers as well as some people who may have never even seen it. In this presentation, I will persuade you of how this 1970s film changed the United States forever. So in order to do this, I'll have to go before, during, and after the release of this film. So before, there was a lot of misconceptions and kind of bad representations of criminals at this time. So in movies in the past, such as this movie I'm going to show you right here, it's called Little Caesar, criminals were shown to be very brutal, and as they are brutal, they weren't really shown to have any compassion or human aspects into them. They were only really greedy people. So as you see right here, these characters, such as this man, this is the main character, his name is Rico, are shown to be very greedy and very aggressive, kind of like basically just like a villain, except they're not an anti-hero or a protagonist at all. It's more like a villain, but you're just watching the movie from their standpoint. And even the actors that they would get to play these roles looked like a villain in some sort of cops and robbers movie. But on the other side, you would also see in real life, people looked at people like Al Capone as they just never had any humanity. They never looked at those types of people with any humanity, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because they were bad people. But it definitely changed these aspects. People definitely looked at criminals a lot different after The Godfather was released. So to keep going chronologically, we'll look at when The Godfather was released. And whenever The Godfather was released, people still had a misconception of Italian Americans, and Italian Americans as a whole were looked at as unsophisticated kind of people with a lack of culture. And something that The Godfather did really well was show that the Italian culture was based deeply in like love and respect for each other's families. So this screenshot of the film right here shows the father with his son. That's the father, that's the son, and he's passing along his power as a mob boss to his son. And what maybe people in the past, before the film was released, would have thought, oh, they probably only want money and power, and that's the whole point of the mob. But in reality, the father really just wants his son to be safe, and he wants to protect his family. And that's what he's doing in this scene, and it's very impactful for the audience and for just everybody that's ever seen it when it was released and afterwards. It showed a very deep part of the Italian American culture and also the culture maybe of criminals, and it showed how maybe they weren't just really brutal emotionless people. Like, they weren't just monsters, they're real human beings. Also, in the past, people really like to look at Italian Americans as just kind of, for lack of a better word, just stupid immigrants. They were very stereotypical of these people, and something that The Godfather did really well was it showed that Italian Americans could be educated, sophisticated, elegant people that had a place in American society. Like the main character, that older man that used to be the mob boss, Michael, he was displayed or showed as a very sophisticated, educated person who could coordinate an entire crime syndicate. And it showed that he had learned and been a part of American society enough to get an education, which was a very important thing because Italian Americans didn't have that representation at the time, and people might have thought of them as just kind of stupid people, which they aren't. Also, what in modern times, we're moving on to what the impact of The Godfather has in our time. The Godfather has impacted TV shows. One of the most revolutionary TV shows, honestly, in the past couple decades has been The Sopranos, that many people, including many people that watch this video, probably know The Sopranos is a is a very famous television show that centers around a suburban family that in New Jersey that it turns out to be the family of a mob boss. And also, furthermore, what's impacted the film industry even more from The Godfather is actors before The Godfather was released, they like to use their body language and show kind of fake, cheesy signs of emotion in their acting. But something that the actors did during The Godfather was they would really immerse themselves in their roles. And it's been shown a lot more extreme today in things called method acting, but it was first practiced by a lot of the people in the 1970s, especially in very popular movies such as The Godfather. Something that The Godfather hasn't done very well in our society today is it's led, as I mentioned earlier, people used to think of criminals as very bad people. But nowadays, people might think of them as bad people, but in films such as like My Friend Dahmer and Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. These are two movies about Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, as you can see right here. And what they've done is kind of take these murderers and give them their real backstories, but in a lot of ways they kind of romanticize them and make people sympathize with them, at least for a little bit. Uh, and while it is okay for society to look at everybody like they do have some humanity, it's not always okay for people to kind of romanticize such criminals. But that has been something that a film such as The Godfather has done, because a lot of people looked at those criminals and they said, "Oh, well, this is a loving family." But yes, they are mob bosses and they are dangerous people. And these are real life people that have had movies made out of them that make people kind of think the same thing, which is definitely not good. So in conclusion, that by looking deeper into society in both the past and the present, The Godfather proves of its influence across the country in not only big name actors and directors, but also in the minds of every American citizen. This piece of cinema has softened hearts towards criminals, tore down stereotypes of Italian Americans, and reshaped the film industry as a whole. And also, in my citing, I have used the movie Scarface from 1932. I got references from that to use in mine. And then I used Joshua Anderson from UC Berkeley. I used one of his articles on the analysis of The Godfather. I used Rotten Tomatoes review of Little Caesar from the Rotten Tomatoes website. I used some of the archives from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the Academy Awards. I used that to see the awards that were rewarded to The Godfather. And I also read on an interview about a lot from the Smithsonian about the original writer of the book The Godfather, and his opinions on a lot of those scenes, which is where I got a lot of unique information on the scene with the mob boss and his son, Michael, and his son.